I pushed this hard. Not that it needed to be hard, but in our announcements, I had to pull back about it. I was going too much into it. We have Sarah Elizabeth. Everybody loves Sarah Elizabeth. You guys are making special. You know, I have to say, I do want to say what I said at the 8 a.m. is that she is my favorite astrophysicist, scientist. I'm giving you different titles than probably, but also because she walked into church here for her first time visiting with her prayer book, Episcopal prayer book that she's had for years. And so she represents to me that beautiful blend of science and faith and religion that are not contradictory but blend together in such a beautiful way. So help me to welcome Sarah Elizabeth.
All right, well, I'm glad it's a very friendly crowd. Thank you all for being here this morning. I know it's Father's Day. Oh, thank you, the microphone. Hello, there we go. Okay, now you've got me. Hello, again, good morning. Thank you all for being here. Am I still not loud enough? Is this okay? Okay, hopefully, I talk with my hands a lot, so hopefully people will continue to be able to hear me. I know it's Father's Day. I know there's some not great air quality issues going on outside right now. So thank you all for making the effort to come to church and then stick around or come early before the 10 o'clock to hear a little bit about the Artemis mission. And really quickly, happy Father's Day. My dad always jokes, that he's been asked to say a few words. And of course, he's not here. He's in Kansas City. He's not saying a few words, but I can at least include his picture. He's touching a moon rock at the Kennedy Space Center when we took a family trip there a number of years ago. So to all of the fathers, grandfathers, father-adjacent people, it's your day. Celebrate. So this is a picture of the moon. Hopefully everybody knows that. And one of the things that I think is really cool about the moon, and the Artemis II astronauts have talked about this in multiple press conferences, is that the moon is different than other bodies in our solar system because we can all see this with our naked eye in the night sky. And we all have different stories about the moon. We all have different memories of seeing the moon. I've asked this in different audiences before. Does anyone have a favorite phase of the moon? No, maybe that's just the nerdier crowds that I ask. So I do have a favorite phase of the moon, as it turns out. I really like a waxing crescent. It's when you look up at the night sky and the moon is just this tiny little sliver, and it looks like a smile. I'm seeing some nods. So I've always thought that it looks like a smile. I always feel like God is smiling at me when I see the moon like that. And I remember in 2020, I was supposed to be the maid of honor for my best friend in her wedding. She was getting married in July of 2020, July 25th. And of course, everyone remembers in the summer of 2020, we were in the middle of a global pandemic. What other people might not remember is that we were also launching a spacecraft to Mars. We were sending the Mars Perseverance rover. We were intending to launch on July 30th. I was part of the navigation team. I was one of 3 people on our 15-person team who was physically going on lab to JPL. And so I was essentially told that I couldn't travel. So I couldn't go to my best friend's wedding. I couldn't be her maid of honor. We've been best friends since we were 10. I'd been really looking forward to it. I was pretty emotional about not being able to be there, and I was going for a run in Pasadena, and I looked up, and there was this waxing crescent moon. There was this smile in the sky, and I remember thinking, you know what? It's all going to be okay. We've been friends for more than 20 years. We will continue to be friends. Yes, this is a meaningful moment, but this moment doesn't define our friendship. Unfortunately, it didn't. I'm a godmother to one of her kids, so we recovered from that episode. But this is just a long way of saying that the moon is very meaningful for us because it's something we can see. It's something that's tangible. You can see the planets through telescopes, and hopefully some of you have. We can see pictures of Mars. We can see pictures of moons that are really far away. But this is something that we can all see with our naked eye and have seen with our naked eye. I say all of that, but none of us have ever actually seen this with our naked eye, because this is a picture of the far side of the moon that the Artemis II crew took on their 10-day journey. So for those who don't know, the moon is what we call tidally locked, and that means that the same face of the moon is always facing the Earth. So even though the moon's phase may change, it goes from that crescent to a first quarter moon, to a full moon, and then back to a new moon again, we only ever see the same side of the moon. We don't ever get to see this with our human eyeballs, but the Artemis II crew did. So this is a special picture that is a unique perspective of something that we all get to see every day. And because there's so much I could talk about, and for those of you who have seen me talk before know that I do talk a lot, I'm going to instead play this video. Hopefully it'll work. That's a summary of the mission.
Taking their first steps outside for their historic test flight.
4 brave explorers ready to ride the most powerful rocket NASA has ever launched.
Read, Christine, hear me.
We are going for our families.
We are going for our teammates.
We are going for all humanity.
So if it's too choppy, we'll move on.
Engines lit. 4, 3, 2, 1. Booster ignition. And liftoff. The crew of Artemis II now bound for the moon.
Houston integrity. Great view.
This is a test flight, and so every single system aboard Orion is getting tested by humans for the first time. That is Earth in the center of your screen from the Orion spacecraft, looking back at all of us.
Houston is go for TLI. With this bird to the moon, we do not leave Earth. We choose it.
The 4 of us have looked at this moon our entire lives, and the way we are responding to what we are seeing out the window, it's just like we're a bunch of little kids up here. We cannot get enough of this.
That is something we have never seen before.
It's hard to wrap your mind around. I mean that sincerely. It really bends your mind. As we prepare to go out of radio communication, to all of you down there on Earth and around Earth, we love you from the moon. Just seeing Tycho, there's mountains to the north. You can see Copernicus, Rainier Gamma. It's just everything from the training, but in 3-dimension and absolutely unbelievable.
Copy Moonjoy. Superlative thumbs up.
This is we just went sci-fi.
I think there is enough for all. The purpose of humanity is joy and lifting one another up, creating together. This is a whole bunch of nothing, this thing we call the universe. You have this oasis, this beautiful place that we get to exist together.
Well, I'll tell you, after ignition, to me, the moment that I'm going to be most excited for is splashdown. There's no question about that. Good shoots coming down off the West Coast.
And there go the first series of parachutes. And Houston, we're visual 2 drones out the window. Main chute deployed. We most importantly choose this moment to challenge this generation and in the next to make sure this record is not long-lived.
This is a relay race.
It takes an army to pull a mission together like this, right across all 10 of our centers, all of our commercial partners, the international partners that come together to make this possible.
All right, that's one of 3 videos, so we're doing good so far. So that's I think a really good overview, really good synopsis. I think it's very moving. I find it moving. Then again, I'm biased, but a good overview of what this mission was and starts to get into what it means for all of us here on planet Earth. We won't need to watch it again, though. So as they said in the video, Artemis II was a test flight. And so what that means is that we are testing new pieces of technology. We are testing new processes. We are testing new procedures. We're testing new systems. We're essentially making sure that all of the things that humans need to live in deep space work the way that they are supposed to. Of course, humans have been living and working in space for more than 20 years aboard the International Space Station, which is orbiting above our heads about 250 miles. But there's a distinct difference in operating, living and operating in what we call low Earth orbit, or operating close to the Earth, compared to being in deep space. And in past forums, when I've talked about being an analog astronaut, a pretend astronaut, essentially, I talked about something called the overview effect. And this is an idea that when you go into space and you see the Earth as a whole, there's actually a psychological shift in your brain about how you think about the world and how you think about humanity. And that's more magnified the farther away you go from the Earth. So the test aspect of Artemis II was sort of, in engineering terms, the level 1 objectives. We wanted to make sure that all the systems worked the way that they were supposed to, the astronauts could do what they needed to do. And then, of course, because NASA is NASA and we want to make sure that we can do the most we can with what we have, we also had some science that we did as well. So really quickly, one of the things that we wanted to do was monitor the astronauts' health when they were in deep space, because again, being in deep space is a different environment than being in the low Earth orbit space environment. So we wanted to monitor their physical health, mental health, emotional health, all of those different things. And so they wore, because NASA is NASA, we can't just call this a smartwatch. This is a personal actigraphy device, because of course we have to call it that. But it is kind of funny because this actually reminded me of some of the things that I had to wear when I was an analog astronaut. So it was actually kind of cool to see, oh my gosh, like they're wearing the stuff that I wore, or rather like I wore the stuff that you know, they will wear. So there was a lot of astronaut monitoring. And then, of course, there was actual geological science observations that the astronauts were making of the moon. And so this is from a field expedition that they did in Iceland. I love that not only when you're an astronaut that you get to go to space, but you get to take field trips to Iceland. Like, I just think that's super cool. And so this is Christina Cook. She's in the orange, and then she's with a real geologist, and unfortunately I can't remember her name, but doing training so that, you know, because none of these astronauts are actual geologists. And so they do a lot of training so that when they see the moon, they can use the right vocabulary, they can make the kinds of observations that are most beneficial to geologists to help us, you know, better and further understand the moon. This is a photograph of Victor Glover, and we're actually going to talk probably the most about Victor Glover this morning. But he's looking out the window. This is actually when they're doing their lunar flyby. So at their closest, the astronauts were about 4,000 miles from the moon, which is pretty close, having gone, you know, 250,000 miles all the way to get there. And so he's looking out the window, taking some observations, and then hopefully this video is going to work. So this is a video when the astronauts flew past the moon. There was about 45 minutes when they were on the far side of the moon, what some people maybe informally call the dark side. It's not technically dark, but we call it the dark side because we don't see it. But when they're on the far side of the moon, we cannot communicate with them. So there's about a 40-minute period of radio blackout. And so going into that, the ground controllers were talking to the crew, and I'll let Victor Glover say his words first, and then I'll tell you my perspective about it.
26 seconds away from that loss of signal. Again, we will be out of communication with them for about 40 minutes until they come around the other side of the moon and we can re-establish contact.
So this is the capsule that they're in, this is the moon, and then the Earth is that sliver on the far side.
Integrity Houston, you are 6 minutes from your 40-minute lunar flyby LOS. From all of us, it's a privilege to witness you carrying the fire past our farthest reach. Thank you. Godspeed.
Thank you for that, Jenny, and thank you to all of you for allowing us the immense privilege to be on this journey together. It's quite amazing. And as we go on this journey to thinking about the NASA mission to explore the unknown in air and space, to innovate for the benefit of humanity, and to inspire the world through discovery. And as you've gone along on this journey with us, hopefully we're doing just those things. And as we get close to the nearest point to the moon and farthest point from Earth, as we continue to unlock the mysteries of the cosmos, I would like to remind you of one of the most important mysteries there on Earth, and that's love. Christ said in response to what was the greatest command, that it was to love God with all that you are. And he also, being a great teacher, said the second is equal to it, and that is to love your neighbor as yourself. And so, as we prepare to go out of radio communication, we're still to feel your love from Earth, and to all of you down there on Earth and around Earth, we love you from the moon.
Houston copies. We'll see you on the other side.
Oh, am I back? Okay.
We will see you on the other side.
Light time delay. Okay. So I remember I was working the night shift during the Artemis II mission. So that essentially means I was working, anywhere from 11 o'clock at night. My shift, would start maybe at 11 o'clock at night, and I'd work overnight till 9 o'clock in the morning. The next night, I might start work at midnight and then work from midnight to 10 o'clock in the morning. And this lunar flyby happened around, I want to say like 3:30 in the afternoon local time. So I should have been sleeping, getting ready for my night shift, but of course I was not, because of course this is one of the single most important, or at least interesting, certainly moving parts of the mission. So I was in my pajamas at 3:30 in the afternoon, sitting on my couch under a blanket. And I had no idea that Victor Glover was going to say anything like this. I did not know that he was a deeply religious man. And so I remember hearing this, and again, I'm just like curled up on the couch getting ready to go into my night shift. And I was very moved by these words that he said, and that he felt empowered to say them in this moment, in this setting. And so this video here is sort of that whole conversational bit where he's talking about Jesus, he's talking about the commandments, he's talking about loving your neighbors as yourself. And then in other compilations, right, that whole thing is chopped up into smaller pieces. So I wanted to make sure that everyone here heard that full dialogue, because I think that full thing is really important, and that full minute and a half, or 2.5 minutes isn't in a lot of the other things that you've said, or that that has been put together. And so I think, as I've talked about before, even when I was, quote, like an analog astronaut, right? Like I didn't actually go into space. I didn't actually fly by the moon. But in ways that I did not expect or anticipate, that experience changed me and changed my relationship with God. And so then it was very kind of a full circle moment to hear someone say that, when they're actually doing it. And so I thought that was really cool, and wanted to make sure everyone, if they hadn't seen or heard about this already, had a chance to hear that this morning.
And 26 seconds away from that long...
You don't need to hear it again, though, Esgray. Oh my gosh. There we go. So thinking about, God and Jesus and the commandments, then you have an image like this. So this is real. This is not AI. Real image that the crew took on their mission. This is on their way back to the Earth. They have flown past the moon. And this is a solar eclipse as viewed from space, as viewed from the Artemis II capsule. You might have heard on the video just before them calling it integrity. So every crew gets to name their own capsule, and this crew chose to name their capsule integrity. And so in the video that we heard before, you probably heard Victor Glover say, we just went sci-fi, and he's talking about this. Because this doesn't look like it doesn't look real. And so this was by design, or being able to see this was something that was intentional, because what's the best way to explain this? So the sun and this is the moon, right, blocking the sun, and the glow that you see here, this is the solar corona. So that's the upper atmosphere of the sun. Has anyone seen a solar eclipse here on the Earth? I see a couple hands. Okay, good. So most of us conceptually are familiar with the solar eclipse, but this is really unique because humans have never seen anything like this before. In the Apollo era, we sort of had some solar eclipses. Technically, we had solar eclipses, but they didn't look like this because the astronauts were significantly closer to the moon. And so the moon was not big enough to fully cover the sun, if that makes sense, right? So the astronauts here were far enough away from the moon that the moon was just big enough for us to get this image. Yes. Oh, so I'm getting to the background. Yeah. So good leading question. Thank you. Your check's in the mail. So this was by design, right? The capsule had to be in exactly the right place on its trajectory relative to the moon and the sun for us to get this. This was only possible if we launched on April 1st or April 2nd. And we launched on April 1st. We were supposed to launch in February, and then we didn't for many reasons that were valid. And so had we launched in February, this wouldn't have happened. Nobody would have seen this. So you talk about silver linings, things working out the way they're supposed to. We were maybe supposed to see this and marvel anew at the beauty of our solar system and all of the things that are out there in our universe. So this is really cool, right? Of course, this is the moon, the glow is the sun, and then you see stars in the background. And then, sorry, normally I don't want to trip on this cable, but these three brighter dots down here in the bottom, those are planets in our solar system. So the one closest to the moon is Saturn. The middle one is, I think it's Mars, and then the farthest one is Mercury. Now it's a little interesting, right, because Mercury is actually the closest planet to our sun. Hopefully people remember that. And the reason that they line up like this is a function of where those where those planets are in their orbits relative to the sun. So even though Mercury is physically closest to the sun, from a particular perspective, if Mercury is in a certain part of its orbit, it could appear farther away, if that makes sense. So this is a really cool picture. It's sort of like if people remember the photograph that Cassini took of the Earth from Saturn back in, I think it was, I don't remember if it physically took the photo in the late 90s or the early 2000s, but then Carl Sagan called Earth the pale blue dot. That was a very iconic photo and was a very iconic moment, for all of us in our history, seeing the Earth from that perspective from so many millions of miles away. And I don't know that one would say this is exactly like the pale blue dot, but for me, it's, I think, just a remarkable image because it shows not just the moon and something that we're familiar with, but other things that we're conceptually familiar with and just in a very new way. And so it reminds us, I think, yet again, that for all we know, all that we understand, all that we think we understand, there are always new ways to look at your reality. There are always new discoveries and new perspectives to be had and to be made. This is just a photo of Mission Control in Houston, and I want to highlight this because I don't think there's a sign that says it here, but if you see sort of here in between the two flags, that says ground control right there. So there are specific stations in ground control to make sure that the mission proceeds as it should. And that is not new for Artemis II. We've done that, since the Apollo era. But this group of individuals and this set of computers is new. This is a dedicated science control station in mission control. And this was the first mission for which something like this had ever been stood up. And so this goes to show that, again, even though Artemis II itself was a test flight, there was still a critical science component to this mission, and it was important to lay the groundwork for future Artemis missions that will continue to do even more science. And so having a dedicated science group in mission control is really cool and groundbreaking, and it's fun because the scientists in charge over here are both women. Not that I'm biased. So getting into the crew a little bit, it's 4 astronauts and there were 2 backups. In that audio I played for you when Victor Glover was sharing his message from the flyby, and he was saying thanks to Jenny. Jenny was one of the backup astronauts on the Artemis II crew, and so then as is pretty common in NASA missions, typically the backups will then be in mission control and will be communicating with the astronauts. And so Jenny was one of those controllers that they were talking to during the lunar flyby. And so physically on board Artemis, you had the commander, Reed Wiseman, a NASA astronaut. You have the pilot, Victor Glover, a NASA astronaut, also from Southern California. You have mission specialist, Christina Cook, a NASA astronaut. And then last but certainly not least, you have Jeremy Hansen, an astronaut from Canada. Okay, good. It's a very smart audience. So this was very important because Artemis wasn't just Americans going to the moon, right? The whole intent behind Artemis is that, yes, we've sent humans to the moon, but we haven't sent a crew that looks like this to the moon before. So you see that it's a different makeup of individuals than what we sent back in the Apollo era. And so you have different genders, you have different races, and then you have different nationalities. And so being able to send a Canadian astronaut was critical and a very big deal. In the video, we talked about our international partners. We talked about the commercial partners. We talked about all the different people who made Artemis a success. And so in case people don't know, the Artemis capsule that they were living in, which by the way is like the size of a minivan, so imagine being with 3 of your closest friends in a minivan for 10 days and you don't get out. So that was on top of what we call the service module. And so that was the thing that was powering the capsule the 10 days that they were in space on their mission. And that service module was built by the European Space Agency, by ESA. So a very critical component to this entire mission was provided by an external agency to NASA. So this very much was an international partnership, an international effort. And Jeremy Hansen, of course, is the face that we all will recognize for that, but it is above and beyond Jeremy Hansen as well. And so I could talk about all 4 of these people at length. I will not. But I think one of the things that I do want to share is that they all are different. They all have different paths to NASA. They all have different strengths that they brought to this mission. They've all gone through different things to get to this point. Reed Wiseman lost his wife to cancer. They actually named a crater on the moon after her, which was really moving. I think that was pretty well publicized, so hopefully people have heard that before. And so, Victor Glover had been in space before. Christina Cook, of course, had been in space before. But my favorite, I think, sort of fun fact that people might not know is actually about Jeremy Hansen. So people might know, hopefully people know that Canadians have been to space before, but it is less common for Canadians to go into space, and they don't select their astronauts as frequently as we do here in the United States. So Jeremy Hansen was actually selected as an astronaut. He was selected as a Canadian astronaut in 2009. Okay? How long do you think, or what do you think his first mission to space was? This one. So he was selected as an astronaut in 2009, and then he had to wait 17 years. 17 years to go into space. And I guess good things come to those who wait, because after waiting 17 years, he got to be on this mission, and he got to be one of the 4 people who have now traveled as far as humanity has ever traveled from planet Earth. But looking at these 4 people, there's so many facets to their personalities. There's so many things that they can teach us. And I think in particular, for me at least, Jeremy Hansen's resilience, his patience, his belief that his moment would come, or hopefully his belief, his hope that his moment would come, is something that I think we can all take back, especially in this era of instant gratification, wanting things yesterday. Every time you order something online, it's like, oh, well, if you just give us a couple more dollars, we can get it to you in 30 minutes. And so, sometimes that's important, sometimes that's needed, but I think it would behoove all of us to be a little more patient, and to wait and reflect and be more intentional. And so I think Jeremy Hansen reflects that very, very well. Yes. Ooh, what are their ages? That's a good question. I don't know offhand. I think Reed Wiseman is the oldest. I want to say they're all like late 40s, early 50s. So relatively speaking, they're actually a pretty young group. I think that's pretty young. So that's my best answer, but I could look it up for you later. So that's the crew, and then this is another video that hopefully is going to work.
Victor, I have one for you. Apollo 8 had a memorable Christmas Eve reading from Genesis. Do you have a message you'd like to share from space about Easter Sunday?
You know, I don't have anything prepared. I'm glad you brought that up, though. I think these observances are important, and as we are so far from Earth and looking back at, you know, the beauty of creation, I think for me, one of the really important personal perspectives that I have up here is I can really see Earth as one thing. And, you know, when I read the Bible and I look at all of the amazing things that were done for us who were created, it's, you have this amazing place, this spaceship. You guys are talking to us because we're in a spaceship really far from Earth, but you're on a spaceship called Earth that was created to give us a place to live in the universe, in the cosmos. Maybe the distance we are from you makes you think what we're doing is special, but we're the same distance from you, and I'm trying to tell you, just trust me, you are special. In all of this emptiness, this is a whole bunch of nothing, this thing we call the universe. You have this oasis, this beautiful place that we get to exist together. I think as we go into Easter Sunday thinking about, you know, all the cultures all around the world, whether you celebrate it or not, whether you believe in God or not, this is an opportunity for us to remember where we are, who we are, and that we are the same thing and that we got to get through this together.
Well, for someone who didn't have anything prepared, that was really quite extraordinary.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'd ever want to do improv with Victor Glover. So again, I'm not sure, just in case anyone hadn't heard that message or hadn't read any pieces of those quotes in any news articles, I just wanted to make sure that this crowd in particular, I mean, honestly, everybody should hear this, I think. But again, I think it goes to show, right, that something like this, one of the things actually that was funny, because I was working the night shift, I was really disoriented. I actually, in the middle of the 10-day mission, had one day shift, so I had to flip my schedule and then flip it back. So I didn't always know what day it was or what time it was, and I was kind of disoriented. And so I didn't fully appreciate the impact of Artemis II as it was happening. And of course, they land back on a Friday night during happy hour. It was a little after 5 o'clock, just off the coast of San Diego. And then Saturday, I went to a brunch for Junior League. We were celebrating our 100th anniversary, our centennial. And so I talked to a bunch of friends, and they said, "Oh my gosh, Sarah Elizabeth, Artemis II has been so cool. It has been so much fun to read about it in the news, to follow it online. And it's been so much fun to open up the news and see something exciting, see something that's positive, see something that I want to see." And I think I didn't fully appreciate that as it was happening, because like it's my job, and I knew that it was really cool, and there are a couple other things as I was experiencing it that I knew were really cool, and I'll talk about those in a couple minutes. But I didn't fully appreciate, I think, the global impact that this mission had and that these 4 individuals had. And so then it sort of took a little bit of time and a little bit of distance and some other people, frankly, to say, you know, how meaningful this is and how cool this is. So I think of course, there's all the technical stuff, right, that Artemis II has demonstrated work. There's all of the really cool science that they took from the moon. But I think one of the best legacies, hopefully one of the best legacies of Artemis II, is going to be that inspiration that they have provided for the world. That if we choose to work together, if we choose to love one another, we can do extraordinary things. And so I think this was a very tangible, a very real reminder of that at a time when the world really needs it, I think. And so for me, that's one of my favorite aspects of having contributed to something like this. And you know, having a very small, minuscule part of something that was very meaningful for a lot of people.
Victor,
so really quickly, my part. For those who don't know, I'm a navigation engineer up at JPL, and so I tell people I'm an interplanetary Google Maps. It's our job to figure out where you are and to make sure you don't get lost on your journey. And so that's especially important when you have 4 people on board. And so this is an animation of the Artemis II trajectory. So, you know, it flew past the Earth. It then did a slightly bigger loop. It was in about a 24-hour orbit around the Earth just to do additional system checkout to make sure that worked as expected. And then, of course, it goes out on this longer journey to the moon, flies past the moon, then comes back to the Earth and lands just off the coast of San Diego. And so this is what the whole trajectory looks like, just in a static version. And so this is a really neat trajectory. I think it's a really neat trajectory, but again, biased. This is what we call a free return trajectory. And so the intent behind designing a trajectory like this was to ensure that as soon as we performed what we call the trans-lunar injection, the TLI maneuver, and so that is, I'm trying to remember these colors. It's basically like you've launched, you've come around the Earth, you're doing this bigger orbit in green here, and then right around here, you do this TLI burn to insert onto a trajectory that's going to take you out to the moon and then back to the Earth. And so being a free return trajectory means that as soon as you do this burn, you will come back to the Earth. You will come home. You do not have to perform any additional maneuvers on the way out. You don't have to perform any maneuvers at the moon. You don't have to perform any maneuvers on the way back to ensure that you will get back home. And so based on past experience, anyone who has seen Apollo 13, lived through Apollo 13, we didn't want a repeat of something like that, where there was a chance that the astronauts would not come home. And so we still had the opportunity to perform maneuvers on the way out and the way back to refine the trajectory to ensure that they, landed exactly where we wanted them to, as opposed to, say, like the middle of the Pacific. But we knew that they would get back. So the free return trajectory aspect was very important for this mission and for the crew. Just a couple of pictures really quick. So this is the launch. I just think this is beautiful because the SLS is a really, really powerful rocket. We saw the actual launch in the video. This, of course, is beautiful. I remember I've talked about this book in this forum before, but it's called Leave Only Footprints, about the man who went to all 63 national parks in a calendar year. And one of the things that he talked about that no one ever does is when you go off on these magnificent adventures, especially if you're going by yourself, you take pictures when you have summited the mountaintop. You take pictures when you have reached the canyon. You take the picture when you have gotten to your destination. No one ever takes a picture when they get back to the parking lot. Right? I mean, the parking lot's not that great, right? The top of the mountain is way more scenic than the parking lot. For anyone who's ever gone hiking up in the mountains, up off the two, the top of any mountain up there is way better than, some traffic whizzing past you. But the thing is, getting back safely to your car, getting back safely home is as important as getting to that mountaintop. And we just kind of take it for granted. And so I don't think anybody took this for granted, but this is just a reminder that, getting back to the parking lot's always a good thing. Getting back home is a good thing, yes.
How does the Artemis rocket compare to the Saturn V?
More powerful. Mm-hmm. It's a little bit bigger, but yeah, it's the most powerful rocket that we have ever built that works. So that opens up, that maybe opens up the door to some other commercial rockets that haven't quite performed the way we've wanted to, but I'm not going to speak to that because I don't have experience with that. So the landing, the parachutes was super amazing. Anybody who watched this live, I don't know if anybody else had a heart attack, but they opened up what we call the drogue chutes. Those are the smaller chutes first. And it felt like they were open without the mains opened for a really long time. And I just kept waiting, okay, open the main, open the mains, open the real parachutes. And so again, everything worked exactly the way it was supposed to. And then this, I think, also just for me, really captures, right? I already talked about, how amazing this crew is. These are people who are selected to do something that is dangerous, that is hard, that is demanding in every sense of the word. Physically demanding, mentally demanding, emotionally demanding. And so these are people who are at the top of their game. These are people who have inspired me, hopefully have inspired you, have inspired the whole world. And when they come back, they can still recognize how amazing this experience was, and they can become their 5-year-old selves that dreamed of doing this. In the moment, in this hugely critical, mind-blowing moment, they are still able to relish in the joy that they have done this amazing thing. They have done this for humanity. They've come back home, and I love their smiles. I mean, they take up half of their faces. You can feel the joy coming out of these photos. And so that's, I think, one of my favorite takeaways from this mission too. Just to love what you do, to love one another, to love your crew. I'm almost finished. I know we're over 9:45. I've got so much time. Really quickly, I just want to acknowledge the other people. I did not do this alone, of course. So we had Drew Jones, who he's on the screen. He was actually in Texas. Gerard Krasinga, Tomas Martin Moore over here, my giant face, which no one cares about, Shumita, Mark Ryan, he's taking the selfie over there, and then Burton Yale. So this was the room that I was living in for 10 days, our mission support area. So now you know what the 8th floor of my building at JPL looks like. So everyone remembers Earthrise. That, of course, is the very iconic photo that the Apollo 8 crew took of the Earth. And so it was really the first time that anyone had seen the Earth from that perspective. And so this is Artemis II's version of that, and this is now Earth set. And so, of course, you have the moon here in the foreground. You have the Earth there in the background. And again, it's just a very beautiful reminder, I think, that we're all here together. We're all on this pale blue dot. We're all on this oasis, this spaceship, even though we maybe don't think of it like that every day. We're all traveling through space pretty quickly, I might add. We're all traveling through space together, and we have each other, and of course, we have God with us as well on this journey. And this, of course, is a beautiful picture of the moon. This is a less beautiful picture of the moon because it was taken with my iPhone. So again, I mentioned I was working the night shift, and initially, I'll admit, I wasn't as excited about working the night shift. It's kind of a pain to change your sleep schedule. It's not natural, at least for me, to be awake overnight. But it ended up, I think, being the coolest shift to work for Artemis II, because every day when I would go into work, I saw the moon. And so I hadn't realized how meaningful that would be for me, because I have sent spacecraft to Mars, to asteroids. I've sent robotic spacecraft to the moon before, but it didn't make it. I worked on a mission that's going all the way out to Jupiter. So I've seen those things through telescopes, but I can't really look up in the night sky and see Europa. I can't look up in the night sky and see the Psyche asteroid. I can look up in the night sky and see this. And I think I didn't fully appreciate it until, I was doing my first shift. I was walking in. It was about 11:30 at night. I'd seen the launch at JPL. I'd gone home to try and take a nap, which of course was a total failure, and then came back in for my first night shift, and there was the moon rising over JPL. And so I looked at it and I thought, well, I probably thought some things I shouldn't say on church property. I thought, that's it. That's where they're going. And it was a very different perspective. Even though I've done something like this before, it was a very different perspective knowing that there were people, that they were going somewhere that I could see. And then the picture there on the far right, in sort of a small lull of our night shift, one of my bosses, who actually is he's not a very emotional guy, but so we went up to the roof of our building, and we were both just standing there in silence. It was probably about 4 o'clock in the morning, looking at the moon, and then he turned to me and he said, "Oh, point at it and I'll take your picture." And so that's me pointing at the moon. Maybe I'm pointing, where the astronauts actually are. I don't know. But it was a very cool mission to be a part of. And again, just continued, I think, to remind me that, we're all here together, remind me that we all have to love one another. And being a part of something like this was a very moving experience. It's something I'm very grateful for. And I think that's it. Oh my gosh, I ended up with so much time. I'm so proud of myself. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them. And I will have Tom help me with, we sure do.
Yo.
Yes, great.
As this program proceeds, do you think we'll get back to a model like the space shuttle, a more elegant way to come back instead of splashing down in a little tiny capsule and being able to land in an airport and feel more like a human being?
It's a good question, and I think it's in the short term, I think my answer is no. I think ultimately one of the things that people are excited about with the Artemis program is sort of what that means for a real lunar economy and for actual, sort of space tourism. And I think the more we send people there, the more our infrastructure will grow. And we will have certainly more elegant, less terrifying ways to come back than like being in. Victor Glover said in an interview, by the way, I want to make sure I mention this. Candy Carlson actually notified me of this. Victor Glover did a fantastic interview with KTLA just last Friday, I think. And so it's about 25 minutes. You can watch it online. And I highly recommend it. He's a very eloquent speaker, in case that hadn't already been made clear. But he talked about, when you're in the capsule on reentry, it feels like you're in the middle of a bonfire because you have the windows and you see all the flames coming past you. And so you're trained for that. And he said that was when he was most at peace on the mission, which I think explains why he's an astronaut and why most of us are not. But I think it's something that we will certainly consider. That the challenge with something like the space shuttle and going to the moon is the mass and the propellant and all of that to get to the moon. The shuttle worked because it wasn't going to the moon. It was staying in low Earth orbit. And so...
have it waiting in low Earth orbit when they came back.
So that's one of the things we've certainly talked about. That's getting into things that we think about, like on-orbit rendezvous, on-orbit docking, so you could have something more elegant to get you, from the surface to some, low Earth orbit, and then, take the smaller, sort of more cramped shuttle, from low Earth orbit to the moon. And that's certainly something that people are looking at.
Question. Does NASA or JPL know that you're giving these presentations?
No. Well, sort of.
Okay, so have you given this presentation to a more secular group? Mm-hmm. Did you include Love Your Neighbor?
I hadn't been able to find the video, but I said it, yes.
So, yes?
Yes.
So in the future, you might do that.
Yeah, because it's one of those things where I think it's very important. I said, I know that this crowd in particular appreciates it, but I think it's even more important for not this crowd to see it and to hear it and be reminded of it.
Thank you, yeah, wonderful. We have time for another question, and then we'll be late for church again.
How is the Mars mission moving? I think you're part of that, if I understand correctly.
The Perseverance rover? So Perseverance is great. It's plugging along on the surface of Mars. It's collecting samples, doing really well. There was a finding that was published this past summer that they might have found a biosignature, and a biosignature is evidence of life. And so it's something that exists only because life can create it. And Carl Sagan, again, said, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. So if we are going to say, hey, we found life on Mars, it's going to require very rigorous scientific study. And so the biosignature that they found and then released to the world last year, it wasn't, we have definitively found evidence of life on Mars, but is sort of the first kind of very strong candidate. So in a nutshell, I'd say it's doing very well.
Thank you, Sarah Elizabeth.
Normally I run super long. Okay. Thank you all very much.